Welcome, fellow wanderers, to the Sleepless Bard. Tonight, we journey to the mist-wrapped shores of ancient Scandinavia, where the cold sea meets darker waters, and where legends are born not in glory, but in whispered prophecy. Here, beneath skies heavy with the weight of destiny, we begin the tale of one whose name would echo through the halls of Valhalla itself. This is the story of Ragnar Lothbrok. But tonight, we speak not of the man who would become legend. Tonight, we speak of the child who drew his first breath under an omen-dark sky, of the boy who would learn that fate is a thread spun by the Norns themselves, and that even kings must bow before the weaving of wild. Listen well, for in the beginning, there was only silence. In the kingdom of Denmark, in the days when the world was younger and the gods walked closer to mortal ground, there lived a king named Sigurd Ring. His was a realm carved from storm and steel, where the longships rode waves like wolves upon the hunt, and where honor was measured not in gold, but in the songs that skalds would sing of your deeds when your bones had turned to dust. Sigurd Ring was a king who knew the weight of prophecy. He had heard the whispers of the Völva, the seeresses who read the runes and spoke with voices touched by divine madness. They told him of a son to come, a child who would be born with the mark of greatness and the shadow of doom intertwined like lovers' hands. They told him this child would be blessed by Odin All-Father, yet cursed to die by the bite of serpents in a foreign land. Such is the way of heroes, the old king had said, his weathered hands tracing the edge of his sword. They burn bright and brief as stars falling from Asgard's halls. The queen, fair Alfhild, carried this burden in her womb through the long winter months. She felt the child stirring within her like a restless sea, and in her dreams she saw ravens circling overhead, their black wings casting shadows that spoke of battles yet to come. She saw ships with dragon heads cutting through blood-red waters, and she saw a golden-haired man standing at their prow, his eyes holding the wild light of those who are beloved and doomed by the gods. When the birthing time came, it came with signs. The night sky burned with the cold fire of the aurora, green and gold flames dancing across the heavens like the spirits of fallen warriors. The wind howled through the great hall, rattling the shields that hung upon the walls, and the hounds grew restless, their eyes reflecting an otherworldly light. The waves crashed against the shore with unusual fury, as if the sea itself was in labor, bringing forth something new and terrible into the world. In the birthing chamber, lit by the warm glow of hearth flames, Queen Alfhild labored through the long night. The midwives, wise women who had attended the births of kings and thralls alike, whispered prayers to Frigg, the goddess of mothers and wives. They burned herbs sacred to the Aesir and scattered salt in circles, for they sensed that this was no ordinary child seeking entrance to Midgard. And when the dawn came, soft and grey as the down of swans, Ragnar drew his first breath. The child was born with golden hair that caught the firelight like spun sunbeams, and eyes that held the deep blue of northern seas. But it was not his beauty that made the midwives gasp and cross themselves with the sign of Thor's hammer. It was the mark upon his skin, a birthmark in the shape of a serpent, coiled around his left shoulder as if waiting to strike. The oldest of the midwives, a woman whose eyes had seen 70 winters and whose hands had delivered kings and paupers alike, looked upon the child and spoke in a voice touched by knowing. "This one is marked by fate," she said, her words falling like stones into still water. "See how the serpent embraces him even at birth. He will live by the sword and die by the serpent's kiss. And his name will be remembered when the mountains have worn to dust." Queen Alfhild took her son into her arms, and as she gazed upon his face, she felt the weight of prophecy settle upon her heart, like snow upon the earth. She had given birth not merely to a child, but to a legend waiting to unfold. King Sigurd Ring came to look upon his heir, and when he saw the serpent mark, he nodded slowly, for he had expected no less. He lifted the child high, presenting him to the gods and to the gathered warriors who had waited through the night to see their future king. "Behold, Ragnar," he declared, his voice carrying the authority of one who had never bent his knee to any man save the gods themselves. "Son of Sigurd Ring, heir to the throne of Denmark, born under the eye of Odin and marked by destiny itself." The warriors struck their shields with their spears, and the sound rang out like thunder across the fjords. The skalds began composing verses even then, for they knew they witnessed the beginning of a saga that would be told around hearth-fires for generations, yet unborn. But in the quiet moments after the ceremony, when the hall had emptied and the celebration had faded to embers, Queen Alfhild held her son close and sang to him the old lullabies. Songs her mother had sung, and her mother's mother before that. Songs that carried the wisdom of women who had watched their sons sail away to war and glory. She sang of brave warriors who loved deeply and fought fiercely. She sang of the great tree, Yggdrasil, whose roots touched all the 9 worlds, and of the ravens, Hugin and Munin, who carried news to Odin's ears. She sang of love and loss, of victory and defeat, of the endless cycle that turns through all things under the sun. And as she sang, little Ragnar listened with eyes that seemed older than his newborn body, as if some part of him already knew the path that lay ahead. The serpent mark upon his shoulder seemed to shimmer in the firelight, a reminder that even in these first, peaceful moments, fate was already weaving the threads of his destiny. The child grew strong in those early years, fed on stories of heroes, and nurtured by the love of parents who knew their time with him was precious beyond measure. He learned to walk in halls where the walls were hung with weapons that had tasted blood in distant lands. He learned to speak words of power, the names of gods and goddesses, the old tongue that held magic in its syllables, the warrior's code that valued honor above life itself. His father taught him the ways of kingship, how to read the hearts of men and the signs of coming weather. His mother taught him the gentler arts, poetry and music, the healing properties of herbs, the sacred stories that kept the old wisdom alive. From both, he learned that strength without wisdom was mere brutality, and that a king must serve his people as surely as his people served him. But always, there was the mark. The serpent coiled upon his shoulder, dark against his pale skin, a reminder that this child was not like others. The court wise women read omens in the flight of birds and the patterns of frost upon the windows, and all their divinations spoke the same truth. This boy would grow to greatness, but greatness and doom were often lovers who walked hand in hand. Young Ragnar seemed to understand this, even as a child. There was a wildness in him that could not be tamed, a restlessness that spoke of distant shores and battles yet to come. He would stand at the edge of the sea for hours, his golden hair streaming in the salt wind, his blue eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he could see the long ships that would one day carry him to fame and death. The skalds began to sing of him even then, weaving tales of the serpent-marked prince who would grow to shake the world. They sang of how the Norns had spun his fate at the foot of the world tree, of how Odin One-Eye had marked him for greatness, of how the ravens already whispered his name in the halls of the gods. And in the long winter nights, when the aurora danced overhead and the wolves sang their ancient songs to the moon, the people of Denmark would gather around their fires and listen to these tales. They would look toward their king's hall and wonder what manner of man this serpent-marked child would become. For in those days, when the world was wild and full of wonders, everyone understood that some children are born not just to live, but to become legend. Some are born to write their names across the sky in letters of fire and blood, to sail beyond the edges of the known world, to love with the fierce passion of those who know their time is short. Ragnar Lothbrok was such a child, born under omens, marked by fate, blessed and cursed in equal measure by gods who loved their heroes as much for their doom as for their glory. In the years to come, he would fulfill every prophecy spoken over his cradle. He would sail the whale road to distant lands, love deeply and lose greatly, father sons who would shake the foundations of kingdoms, and yes, in the end, he would die as the Völva had foretold, in a pit of serpents in a foreign land. But that is a tale for another night, fellow wanderers. Tonight, we have spoken of beginnings, of the first breath drawn by one who would become legend. We have seen how destiny announces itself not with trumpets and banners, but with the quiet mark of a serpent on a child's shoulder, with the whispered words of wise women, with the dancing lights of the aurora, blessing a royal birth. The serpent mark would grow with him, darkening as he grew strong, coiling tighter as his fate drew near. But in these early days, in the peace of his father's hall, it was merely a reminder of the greatness that waited ahead like a lover patient in the darkness. And so ends our tale of Ragnar's first breath, the first thread in a tapestry that would be woven with gold and blood, with love and betrayal, with victory and defeat. The child born under the dancing lights would grow to be a man who would sail the seas like a wolf unleashed, who would love queens and shield maidens, who would father sons destined to carve their own legends in the flesh of the world. But tonight, he is simply a child, safe in his mother's arms, listening to lullabies that carry the wisdom of ages past and the promise of ages yet to come. This has been the Sleepless Bard. And until we meet again, listen well.